Hi, welcome. I'm Callum Piper and I'll be talking to you today about how to improve your team work. So, what will this talk be about? Well, what I want to look at is how you as individual contributors can affect your team. We'll start by looking at negative side of things, how individuals can maybe unintentionally affect their team in bad ways and give a negative experience. And then we'll move on to the positive side of things and look at, what we want to see on team, how we want to see teams behave, and how you as individuals can go about affecting that and influencing that. So who am I to give this talk? So I've been an IC for most of my career, individual contributor, so that's 20 plus years now. I did try being a TL. When I say try, I was pushed into it, as is the general thing in software development. You work for a small company and they try and move you up. It wasn't successful. Well, it was, I didn't enjoy it. I still get the same kick out of programming and seeing my code work and getting it to compile and solving problems that many of you do. So I've ended up having a career where I've done some contracting, freelancing, and found myself in various roles where I can carry on doing the technical side of things. What this has meant is I've worked on a lot of different teams, throughout sort of various different industries, from sort of engineering companies, finance, tech companies, all sorts of things. And these teams have been predominantly good. I've had an enjoyable career to this point. I hope it continues to be that way. But they've all had some problems. And this talk is going to look at sort of some of the problems I've seen and also some of the good things I've seen and where I've seen things work. So why do I want to give this talk? I've found that as an individual contributor, it's sometimes hard to see or to know that you can make a difference. It's very easy to get stuck in the rut as you're part of a team, which, may not be the worst team in the world, but it may not be the greatest team, and you just kind of plod along. And it's very hard to see, A, that you have any power to change things, that it's not always obvious how things could be different. And even if you want things to be different and you think they could be, how do you go about it? Well, as an individual contributor, do you have any influence? Do you have anything you can do? So we will look at sort of that side of things as to how you actually go about changing things, what you might want to go about changing. But there is a reality to all this. You are an individual contributor, you are at the bottom in a lot of respects, so there are a lot of things that aren't under your control. The org structure as an individual contributor, you've got no control over what your organisation looks like, how much stuff sales are selling, who's planning the workload, who's coming up with the pipelines, and even things like who's rewarded, who's getting all the reward for doing this sort of stuff. And how your team is viewed necessarily. So there's a lot of things that aren't under your control. And unless you're directly involved in, hiring, things like that, then, you don't get much control over who's on your team either. I also don't want to go into the whole TL side of things and management side of things. There are plenty of other very good resources on how to be a good TL out there, how to inspire a team, etc., etc. I'm not going to talk about any of that. I'm not a TL. I don't sort of say I've got any expertise on that side of things. So I want to keep the focus on what you can do as an individual contributor and within that scope. A few things I will flag up here, and I will continue to flag up repeatedly. Communication. No one's going to thank you if you take any of the ideas that we're talking about here and you just go off on one. If you stop delivering what you're actually meant to be delivering, what pays the bills, what keeps the company going, and you go off and do something else, no one's going to thank you. So talk to your TLs, talk to your managers. If you do, hopefully you'll come away with some ideas from this. Maybe you will, maybe you won't. But if you do, just make sure you keep the communication going. And yeah, you know, be aware of what your day job is, what you're being paid to do, you know. So for some of you, you're going to turn around and say, because I've sort of spoken to other people about this, you say, I don't have time for doing any of this. And a few of the things will involve a bit of time and a bit of effort. And if you don't have time and effort, that's kind of where you are in your role. That's where you are, maybe your company is. It's an issue, but that's not something you can necessarily solve as an individual contributor. But the idea is to sort of have a look at some ideas, some of which you might be able to take on that are fairly lightweight, and some which might require a little bit more investment. So as I said, we'll start with bad. So, you know, some examples that I've seen of, shall we say, problematic behaviours where people are doing things and, you know, with the best will in the world, they think they're doing a good job. You know, most engineers, you know, don't set out to be malicious, don't set out to be bad engineers. Everyone wants to be a good engineer and do things the right way. But, you know, look at some of the things that can have a negative impact on teams. First one, ego. I've seen a lot of people who, well, not a lot, a few people, I should say, who, you know, come into and say, you know, oh yeah, I didn't need to use template metaprogramming to solve this problem. It's not my fault if you don't understand that. Here, go and read a book. Come back to me when you understand what this is all about. Not great. You know, and people trying to say, oh yeah, I'm the only one who can possibly understand this. You know, how's anyone else got any hope of it? Well, you know, you don't want to see that. We'll come on to a bit later as to what sort of impact this have on wider team. Because, you know, you might sit there and say, well, okay, so if someone on the team's got a bit of an ego, just leave them alone. It does affect people. Lack of respect. So, I mean, we covered being rude and insulting this morning in sort of the code of conduct stuff. But dismissive and confrontational are also issues within a team. And that can be as simple as just sort of continually giving people a brush off when they come and say, can you help me with, or can you explain with it, and just going, no, not now, oh, sorry, I don't have time for that, I don't know about that. Or even trying to bully people, or even not going that far. But you know, being confrontational, trying to forcefully put your points across rather than trying to persuade them. Also, I've seen cases where management might make an unpopular decision. And, you know, you're there as an IC to give your advice, to give your opinions, you're subject matter expert. So, you know, someone comes to you, your management comes to you and say, what do you think the best way of doing this is? You give your opinions. When your management go away and go, yeah, I'm going to do it this way instead, that's their prerogative, that's their decision to make. You can waste a lot of time and effort, or teams can waste a lot of time and effort fighting management and trying to undermine them and trying to sort of work around the decisions that have been made. And none of that's good. None of that helps the team. Neither does sort of leaving people out of meetings or discussions. Again, you know, you don't want to just invite people who agree with you to the meeting. I mean, what's no point in that? The whole point of having a meeting is to discuss the issues at hand. And if you're left out of those meetings, you start to feel, you know, it's not great. You know, am I really part of this team? Do people want me here? Another issue you get that's on the individual level, but not necessarily individuals' fault or anything an individual can do about it themselves, is having a good understanding of how they fit into the team and how their work fits into the team. And this can become a problem. If you don't know what you're delivering or why you're delivering, or you know what the priorities are between your work and what the team's priorities are and how it all fits together, this becomes a problem. Again, we're looking a little bit later as to why that's a problem, but it affects sort of how your decision makes and how you feel about being on the team. that related to that is team members competing with each other. So, if you are in the situation where you don't really understand what the team's delivering, you've just been given a specific goal, and someone else on team, same thing, they don't really understand what the team's delivering, what the priorities are, and they've got their own goal. Then you start to have these conflicts, rather than working together, which we'll look at later. It's kind of I've delivered my bit. I've done what I've been told to do. What am I concerned about anything else? And that also comes down to how individuals are rewarded as well. If your individuals are rewarded for meeting their own goals, then you end up with this sort of problem as well. Everyone tries to do their own bit to get their own sort of reward, get their own recognition, rather than working more cooperatively. This one is a more interesting one in that you rarely, if ever, see someone very intentionally taking credit for someone else's work. People aren't that brash, people are mostly better than that. But you do get people doing it unintentionally, where it's like, yeah, that was my idea, and going about saying that something was theirs, whereas the reality is, yeah, okay, you did have the original idea, maybe you did give the inspiration to someone to go down that route, which is great, and you deserve some recognition for that. But they've taken it a whole new direction. They've implemented it, they've made it work for this particular problem. So they've taken what you've given them and done something else with it. So, you can't take all the credit, and neither can they. And the converse of that is, I delivered that, I got that out there, that customer is happy because of me. Well, maybe, but did you test it, or did you have a testing team help you test it? Did you do the QA? Who did the code reviews on it? Who helped you out when you're sort of working till 10 o'clock every night, 12 o'clock every night to get it done? You need to be able to recognise all the contribution of everyone that was involved in it, and you can't just go about sort of saying this was all me. So that was a short list. I didn't want to drag out the negative bit too long, but a very not extensive list of things, I've seen go wrong where people have behaved. But why does any of it matter? You've got someone who's maybe got a bit of an ego. Is that really a problem? You've got someone who maybe doesn't quite realise what the team's doing, what direction the team's going in, how their work fits in. Is that a problem? Yes, it is, because the problems don't stay within that person. Other people get involved in it and start to feel that maybe I'm not meant to understand this. Maybe I can't understand this. And why should I make an effort if I'm not going to get the reward for coming up with the ideas? Why should I get involved in this? I'm just going to get told, I'm not so much told off, but people are going to give me grief if I pick this issue up because I'm not going to do it the way someone thinks I should be doing it possibly. And if you're told you can't solve a problem or a problem isn't solvable, then you're going to stay away from it. You're going to try and stay to things that you think you will get rewarded for. Now, obviously, negativity can also be caused by a lot of other stuff that isn't within the remit of the team, and yes, that needs to be recognised. But individual team members can affect how you and the rest of the team feel about the work they're doing. And related to that, it affects people's confidence as well. So if you've got someone who's feeling they're a little bit out their depth, maybe doesn't quite understand anything, maybe I'm not going to be good enough. Am I really good enough to work on this system? Should I leave it to the guy over there who says they're an expert on it? Why am I making an effort to kill myself to make this date? Who's going to care? Will anyone even notice? So, if you don't want individuals on team to affect the confidence of other team members, or at least not in a negative way. And people need to feel they understand the domain they work in. You end up with problems this one I have seen a lot, is where people haven't understood what their team's working on or what sort of the wider project is, they'll find something they do understand, because people like to understand their work they're doing, so they can understand what they're delivering, they can understand when they've succeeded, and they come up with goals that they can achieve, and they carve out a little bit of world for themselves. You know, they've got a piece of code, some classes that they've worked on that they've understood, and they'll hold on to that, and they'll be very protective of that. And that starts to lead, particularly if you get multiple people doing it, to a very isolationist way of developing. Like, everyone on the team has their own little piece of the world that they understand and that they want to hold on to. And that's not, you know, it doesn't lead to a collaborative, and it doesn't lead to a positive feeling within the team. Related to that, you know, if you keep with that idea that everyone's working on their own bit, you also end up with this problem that no one shares ideas. No one looks at other people's work and goes, I know a better way of doing that. Or even if they do, they won't share that. And, you know, you can see, you know, you're working on your bit of the world that you like, you understand. And, you know, even if you notice a car crash going on over the other side of the team, a couple of other people aren't going to make their deadlines. You can see it going horribly, horribly wrong. They'll just go, okay, not my problem, makes me look good. I'm just going to sit here, do my bit. Yeah, it's not good. So what would we like to see? How would we like a team to behave? You want team members to work for each other. You know, you want people to contribute, people to want to step up, people to come together to solve problems. You want, when someone asks for help, you want people to go and help them. When others ask you for help, you go and help them. And if you do that, then when you ask them for help, they will come and help you. And this is particularly important if you're sort of more senior member on the team. If a junior member comes and asks you for help, then, you know, go and help them, spend the time. Now, that doesn't mean do their work for them. A conversation I've had recently is kind of, if you're touching their keyboard, you're probably doing it for them, not helping them. But, you know, go and help them. And conversely, if there's something you're struggling on and you go and ask someone who's perhaps sort of newer to the team or more junior to you how to solve something, because they maybe worked on it more recently than you have, then they will be pleased with that. They will be pleased to come and tell you what they know and have the opportunity to talk about what they know to you. So, you know, give them that chance. You know, particularly if it's, you know, maybe you haven't had to do something build a piece of software for a while. Someone else has been working on it more recently. Go and ask them how to do it. A, it'll be a lot quicker than you having to figure it all out again from scratch. And B, they'll feel good about helping you. And by starting that conversation, if you're the one that starts that and starts doing that, other people will start to follow you doing it. And the team then starts to feel no one's on their own. You also want people to learn from each other. You know, share your knowledge. Don't keep it to yourself. One conversation I had with someone once was kind of, well, I know this. I want to hold on to this. This is why I'm employed here. It's like, no, it might well have been, but it shouldn't be why you're employed. You're not employed for what you know now. You're employed for what you can learn, what you can bring to the team, what you can share. You know, and it also doesn't stop someone else coming along and say, okay, you're off sick, you're off for 2 weeks holiday. Someone else might come in and have to learn it anyway, and then what are you going to do? If that was the only thing you knew and the only value you brought, then you suddenly, yeah. So, you know, share it, and other people will take your ideas in places you hadn't even thought of. So you'll be like, yeah, maybe you could do something like that. And they'll go, yes, I can see how that works, and do something totally different with it. But it's given it started off the thought process. One I've come across lots of times with very junior developers, particularly the first piece of code. And this was true when I wrote my first piece of code many years ago. You write it, you're proud of it, it works, it's really good. You commit it, that's your piece of code. No, it's not. And it's getting people over this hurdle that once they've written code, once it's committed, until it goes wrong, of course, it's no longer their code. As soon as it goes wrong, it is their code again. But, and you want people to look at the team and learn from everyone else on the team. So if you've got some people, senior people, you want them to be role models of the team for people that junior developers can look up to. And, as a junior developer you want them to be learning from each other and from the more senior members of the team. So, when I say senior here, this doesn't necessarily mean by age. It can easily be by length of service as well. You could have a fairly young developer, but who maybe been at the company sort of 5-6 years, knows the way it works, knows how to get things done, knows the domain of whatever that company works in. And you have someone who's sort of older, joins the team. So in a lot of respects, they are the junior developer in that respect because they don't know the code base. They don't know how the teams fit together. So, the roles of senior and junior aren't necessarily by age. They can easily be other measures as well in terms of experience and so on. But recognize when people see you as a senior developer, when people are looking to you to see how to behave, how to get things done, how things work at the company, who do you need to talk to, how do you behave to actually get something released. And, if you are more junior, then look around, see who's actually releasing stuff, see who's getting stuff done, see who do they talk to, who is the person that has the answers, who is the person that can make these things happen, who can get your testing done, who can get your release out, who can help you fix things, who can help you get to diagnose the production issues, and learn who to go to, and, what are the processes, what are the boxes you have to tick to get stuff done. I touched on this one earlier. The respect is important. As ICs, we are there. I see my role. Give advice. I've been programming. I know sort of the domain we work in. I have what I think a handle on good development practices, how I'd like to see things done. That doesn't mean I'm always right, definitely. So put forward your opinions. Put forward your thoughts. But when someone disagrees with you, when the team goes in a different direction, when the company goes in a different direction, support it, get behind it and work out how to make it work. Don't fight it. It's very easy. If someone comes in and say, how do you think we should approach this problem? Oh, I know. We should do this. I've seen this work. Design it like this and we'll follow that. You've given your thoughts. You've given a fairly good idea with good examples of what you want to do. And someone else goes a different way. It's very, very easy to come up and go, right, you're on your own then. That wasn't what I think. I don't think you should be doing that. That's not how I think you should be doing it. But you go off, do it your own, and we'll see where you get to. No. Support it, help them. You're on the team as well. You want this to work. You want your company to succeed, I hope. You want your team to succeed, again, I hope. So help them take that route, because if it does work, then who cares how it's done? So look, you've come up with a solution, you've released whatever product you want to, then that's where you want to get to. The other thing on respect is put your ideas forward. Yes, your ideas will get rejected, and the first time it happens, it's hard. And much like putting forward a conference talk and having it rejected, it's very hard not to take that personally, but it's not personal, hopefully. By and large, it's because, other people have different ideas as to where they want to go. So keep putting forward your ideas. It's not a rejection of you, it's just a rejection of where the team wants to go and what the view is on the best way to do that. Be inclusive of your team. So, if you're organising a team event, look at when people are going to be available. Is evening really the best time for people? Some people have kids, some people have a long drive home, so on. Look at how you can bring the team together. And, it's not always going to work. maybe there's a lunchtime football club you want to be part of. By all means, go for it. And not everyone's going to play football at lunchtime. Not everyone's going to want to go and get coffee and cake at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Those are two examples I've actually been part of. What you need to be particularly careful of is when that's happened, is to not deliberately exclude people and say, no, you can't come, this is our thing, it's not for you. But also discuss, not so much discussing because that happens, but making team decisions. The football one was a really bad example because in the sense that senior management came along to that. It was kind of, a couple of people off the team went, that manager, that manager, that manager, that manager went. And it ended up being a opportunity to have the manager's ear on key issues, which it really shouldn't be. Now, I was a freelancer contractor at that point, so not only was it no skin off my nose, I didn't really have a handle on whether I should or what I should do about that. I just saw it and kind of let it play out. But you did see in the office, the people who played football got very preferential treatment in terms of how the team behaved, and that's not good. Now, can you do much about it as an IC in terms of managers playing football? No, but what you can do is make sure those kind of discussions are brought out. So it's like maybe at a team meeting or a stand-up or something. Weren't you discussing this at the football match the other day? What does everyone think of it? Bring it back into the mainstream. Bring it back to the rest of the team. And, don't deliberately exclude people, don't just have meetings with people who agree with you. Don't have tech reviews with just people who think you've made the right technical decisions. Bring people in who will disagree with, or who may disagree with you. You get a much better consensus and a much better decision if you bring a range of people in, not just the ones who you've already talked to and think you're doing exactly the right thing. Make the effort to understand what's going on in the team, wider team, and help other people who don't understand what's going on as well. So going back to the point of sort of people who don't understand what or why the team's doing things, why are we doing this project, who are we delivering it for, what's the benefit, and how does my piece fit in? Take the time to understand that. If the team as a whole doesn't understand that, talk to the management, get them to explain to you what's the motivation for this, why are we doing this, and if there are people on the team who understand it, then just go and ask them. And answer that question. If someone comes to you and asks you, why are we doing this? And, take the time to explain to them what is the big picture. Now, that doesn't mean you go and tread on other people's toes. You've got to have your piece of work. Someone else will have their piece of work. Unsolicited advice is rarely wanted. But at the same time, it's good to understand what they're trying to do so that when you write your piece, to fit with it, you kind of understand how it's meant to fit together, and you can answer the questions about how this needs to work without needing to go and ask the architect, the manager, whoever else may have come up with the design. And it allows the team to solve the problems themselves. If the team as a whole has a good understanding of what you're trying to achieve, the team as a whole can make decisions. And you do need to tell the manager what you've done. So if you say, we came across this problem, but now we've solved it. Not only is the manager aware that there was a problem, but he's now happy that he doesn't have to get involved in it, doesn't have to solve it, and he can tick it off his list. If you don't tell the manager and run these things past them, then there is always a chance that there's been a misunderstanding and you start going off on the wrong route. So communication is important still. But the more you understand, the more likely you are to be able to make a sensible decision, a good decision, without having to have sort of management, because your manager's got lots of stuff to do, hopefully, probably, and they don't want to be involved in every technical decision. Plus, as an IC, you're going to know the details of the problem much better than the manager, generally. You'll know sort of a lot of the technical details, a lot of the understanding will be in a position to make a more informed decision. The other thing you can do is you'll find that you can start to influence the direction the team goes in purely by knowing what you're trying to achieve. So if you have an idea about how you might simplify the solution or how you might solve the problem in a different way. It allows you to put that forward, because by knowing the context of what you're trying to do, you get an opportunity to put alternatives forward. Now, as said on previous slide, those might not get accepted, people might not think it's a great idea, but sometimes they will, and sometimes you'll come up with a simpler way forward just because you happen to know that Team X over here has done something very similar, and we could leverage some of that code. So you can start to work out what needs to be done. But yes, as I say, you only need high-level understanding. Don't sort of get involved in the details of other people's code, unless they ask you to. So I'm just an IC. Why does any of this matter to me? Why is this my problem? I just get on with my job. Surely someone else should be taking care of all this stuff. Well, yeah. It is kind of fair. I mean, yeah, it's your job to paint the white lines, not your job to move the branches. I get it, but a straight white line would be far better if you had taken a little bit of time just to get that branch out of the way. And the same's true on a team. Yes, you don't have to get involved in this stuff. You could just sit there going along with your day job and stuff. But wouldn't it be better if it was a more enjoyable team to work on? If you put the energy in to make it a more positive experience and more positive interaction with the other people you're working with. And as much as you might want to say, well, this is my manager's responsibility to sort of manage the team and manage how the team works together, they can't do that without the team's input and without the team wanting to be on board with it. As a manager, you can't just tell the team how to work. If the team doesn't, if the team's disjointed, doesn't want to work together, then it's very hard to change that without individuals buy-in, without actually getting people on board with that first. So, if you want to get on board, if you want to start making a difference, then that makes it a lot easier to change the team. And the more team members sort of share ownership of the team, the better the results are, because as much as a disjointed team, you tend to end up with disjointed software that doesn't quite fit together, doesn't quite work. You have a lot of bugs that fall between the cracks where things haven't quite joined up. Whereas if you have a team that takes shared responsibility and understands how everything fits together, you don't have so many of those problems, because people have caught them, people have thought through them, people have tested them, people have understood where the gaps might be and have solved them before, say, it goes into production or before it gets to the final stages of testing, when you might pick up some of these things. And people are more motivated. If you have shared ownership, then you've kind of got some skin in the game, so to speak, and so you're feeling empowered to work on this, to do what needs to be done to get it over the line. But the problem's not me, it's everyone else on my team. I'm awesome. Well, yeah, are you sure? I mean, I'm giving this talk and I don't get all this stuff right. So, focus on yourself. I'm not saying, you're all dreadful developers, I'm really not. But just have a look kind of, how do you interact with people? What could you maybe do differently? And yes, you can approach other team members. Be careful. You need to be confident about who they are and how to approach them, and if you're going to do that. And I'll talk a little bit in a moment about communication. But yeah, mainly it's kind of about how you can change the team, how your approach to communication, how your approach to the problems, how your approach to the team members can affect how the rest of the team feels. So what should you be doing? Well, have a look at, how does your team behave at the moment, and what would you actually like to change about it? Where could you be doing better? Where do you think, there could be a more positive experience for everyone? And talk to your team about it. Don't single out individuals. If you think there's a communication problem, say in general terms there is a communication problem. Don't say, well, Steve never talks to Joe over there, we need to fix that, because that'll start to make you feel isolated and don't. So keep it positive. The whole, one of the key points about this is to keep the communication positive, keep people feeling good about what they're doing, and feel safe about what they're doing. And start doing it yourself as an example. If you want better communication, then start communicating about what you're doing, sharing your ideas, share what you're doing, share what you think you're responsible, or how your piece fits into the rest of the team, shall we say. I mean, you also need to recognise that, you can't change things by yourself. If you're 3 people short on the team in order to meet your deadlines, there's nothing you're going to do about that. You just have to, get the job done. And if you don't get on with your senior manager, again, hard luck. I'm not here to tell you how to deal with that. So, there are things that you can't change. But if you do have problems, if there are people on the team, particularly, and this one's particularly true of negative behaviour. So if you've got someone on the team who's always got a negative attitude, always complaining of, giving off that vibe of, not just a vibe of I've checked out and I'm just waiting for my retirement, but a vibe of this is really bad, I can't work with these tools and that, then start to look at them and try to understand what is motivating that. Do they not understand where we're going, why we're using this tooling? Do they need some training? Do they need, or not so much training as an IC, but do they need sort of some help to understand something? Is there something you can help explain to them, spend some time with them on those sorts of things? See, is there anything particularly that would help them feel better about what they're doing? On that note, if you are working with people who have effectively checked out and, are just waiting for retirement, again, there's not a lot you can do about that one. The best you can hope for is if your team becomes an enjoyable place to work and, they want to come back in and want to start being part of that team again. But that's not on you to fix, and that's not something you can do a lot about. And on the positivity side of things, give praise. I don't do it enough. And give it publicly, but not overbearing. So, don't make a big song and dance about it, but, if you're following agile methodology, you have a stand-up every day, as I'm sure many of you do, or, you have a team meeting, then just say thank you. If someone gave you a hand, say thank you. I was struggling with this, and so-and-so gave me a solution. And it makes them feel good. It makes sure the manager knows they've helped you, and it gives credit. If you make a big deal of it, people can start to feel embarrassed, people feel uncomfortable with it. So, keep it low key, but say it. Propose solutions. And this is one I've been trying to teach kids. 5-year-old comes home from school, started school this year. Daddy, I'm hungry. Yeah, awesome. I'm sorry you're hungry. What can I do about it? And they comes up with, so please can I have an apple? Yes, that's what I want. I want you to come to me with a solution. Sometimes they'll come in, can I have a chocolate biscuit? It's like, no. So, be aware that the solution you propose may not be the ideal solution, but, if you go in with a solution as well as problem, then it's a much more positive conversation. It's a much more positive start to the conversation rather than just a complaint. It's a complaint that you've thought about and, you have an idea. Now, sometimes, particularly if the issue isn't a domain you're familiar with, going back to the GitHub one in the keynote this morning, like going, I really hate Git, I don't get on with Git, let's go back to SVN. That's not going to work, that's not going to fly. But maybe someone will come up with an alternative like, well, okay, let's give you some cheat sheets for how to use Git, let's get you up to speed on Git, and someone will give you an alternative solution that will work. But it's a lot more positive going in with any solution than just going, Git's rubbish, I hate Git, I hate, So always try and come up, and if you genuinely can't see a solution to the problem, then phrase it in a positive manner, like, is anyone else having issues with? Does anyone else have a problem with? And either someone will come back with say, no, I do it like this, and problem solved, you've got a solution for how to work with it. Or everyone will go, yeah, this is a real issue, at which point you can collectively try and come up with some ideas for how to solve it. And if you do put forward a solution, and that's people think, oh yeah, it's a great solution, take ownership of it, do something about it. Don't just rely on other people to solve problems. Now, that is one that you do need to obviously get your management's buy-in with, because no one is going to thank you if you just spend 6 months on some side project to make things better and you miss your multi-million-pound deliverable at the end of the month. So you do need to be careful with that, but at the same time, if your manager says, yeah, this is a big problem, we haven't been able to do about it, loads of engineering resources being wasted on it, then go down that route and take ownership and get it done, because people will thank you for it. Lead by example. So if you're, and this one again is particularly if you're sort of more senior and senior developer, senior engineer on the team. Invite people into conversations, particularly quieter people. So, if you're having a discussion about a design discussion, maybe about a piece of work, or, maybe you do joint code reviews, draw people in, ask people what their opinions are. It makes people feel more included in the team, and it'll make people feel like they should have an opinion on it, and it encourages people to think about, what is my opinion on this? You've asked me a question, and it also ensures people understand what's going on, and it will highlight if maybe they haven't got quite as much knowledge of what the project is, and it gives you a chance to talk about that as well. But yeah, just generally sharing your knowledge. Share if you've got ideas, if you've got thoughts, or if people are asking questions. Share. So we've talked a lot about communication and how you should communicate with your team, and what you should be communicating with your team, and how to keeping the communication positive. But how do you actually do that? So in terms of putting forward your ideas, there's different approaches depending on whether it's your team you're trying to promote something to, or whether it's sort of something slightly outside your domain. Maybe you've had an idea about, you want to upgrade the compiler to C++20, or you want to do something that's maybe a bit broader or a bit wider. So if it's your team, it's usually fairly straightforward to start the process, in that you can talk to your manager, you can talk to the rest of your team and try and set up a meeting and get the team together. That's usually a fairly easy thing to arrange. And people are usually on board, sort of, okay, I've got an idea. People usually give you the time of day to at least present something. If it's outside of your team, you need to be a little bit more careful. You don't want to organise a huge meeting just to put something forward that isn't sort of in your area of expertise. But you can reach out to people, reach out to the person whose domain it is, reach out to sort of people who are working on this. So, if you want to upgrade the compiler, talk to the people managing your build systems, or assuming you have that, or if you want to use a different test framework instead of Google Test, maybe whoever's in charge of your testing, reach out and say, hey, look, what do you think about this? Can we discuss it? And put it forward as a question, as a request, and maybe they'll say, no, we're Google Test all the way, don't want to hear about anything else. And at that point, you kind of do have to say, okay, that's not my domain, I've suggested it, not interested. But they might be receptive. And within your team, as I say, your team will usually be receptive to at least listening to what you put forward. So how do you put it forward? You need to put two things forward, both the problem you're trying to solve and what your solution is. And the positive aspect comes from emphasizing your solution and why your solution is good. Don't spend, if you've got a half-hour meeting, don't spend the first 20 minutes slating the previous system. If you're overwhelmingly negative about what's there already, it doesn't promote the discussion, and it doesn't promote your idea. Yes, obviously say what's wrong, but say what's good about your system. Why is there a benefit in changing? Why is your system better? And be honest about the costs. If you are advocating a new process, shall we say, you want to tweak the way you're doing your agile processes, you want to have a retro at the end of the sprint, things like that, whatever it might be. be honest about what it's going to cost and where that time is going to come from, so that when you're having a discussion, particularly with your managers there and teams there, people are aware of what's happening. Because what you don't want is to say, oh yeah, let's have a retro at the end of this sprint, half day, we'll spend half day reviewing it. And that's sort of out the 8 people on your team, and suddenly you're not meeting any of the deadlines anymore because the entire team's spending half a day discussing the last sprint. If no one realises this is going to happen, then this is going to be a problem. If you've been upfront and presented it like that, then people can make informed decisions as to what the cost benefit of this change is. Now, it is very tempting to say, I want my idea to be accepted, I want people to buy into this, I want people to go with my idea. And so you kind of gloss over this stuff, but no one's going to thank you if the idea kind of backfires because no one's planned for it properly. The other thing with going into these discussions is have in mind what you want the outcome to be and be realistic about it. If you go to your team and say, yeah, let's delete all our Google tests and go with this new test framework I saw at a conference, what is realistically going to happen there? Is everyone just going to down tools and rewrite all the tests in the next couple of months? No. So, if it is something like that, look at, do you want to just start a discussion on it? Do you maybe set up a trial on something? Is there a way of doing it piecemeal, bite-sized? And if you can sell sort of a bite-sized baby steps version of whatever change you want, then that is often a lot more appealing and lower risk to sort of the management who eventually have to give the okay for these sorts of things. And if it's a problem that everyone's been having, you're proposing a solution to, then even just discussing the problem and getting it out there on the table, sort of discussing sort of the elephant in the room. Why does our build system take so long? Why does our builds take so long? Then maybe just sort of having that discussion and getting everyone to accept that the build system is a problem. Is there something we can do about it? That could be seen as a win. Someone else comes up with an idea. Maybe you like it, maybe you don't. If you like it, say so. They've come out there, they've come out and put something forward. So support them. If you agree with it, don't just sit there and nod your head, go, yes, I agree with that in front of people, because then they'll feel a lot better about having stood up and put their ideas forward. Because it's scary proposing something, particularly if you're someone maybe newer to the team or a bit more junior, putting that idea forward in front of your team, or even just to you as maybe a more senior developer, that can be a bit scary. So, support it. If you don't like the idea, be honest. I'm not saying you should ever sort of say yes to something you don't agree with, but be specific. Say why. Where's the flaw in their reasoning? Where's the flaw in their thinking? What are the risks? What haven't they thought about? What do they maybe need to go away and come up with a solution for? Don't just say, nah, computer says no. Don't. Because that will make them feel bad, whereas what you want them to come away with is having learned something, not that bad feeling of, oh, that was a waste of my time. Because if you actually say, well, have you thought about how this situation will be handled? They'll go, no, okay, that's fair. And they'll feel good about that. They'll come away thinking, okay, that idea hasn't been dismissed. Let's see if we can extend it and make it work. And, you're even just as an IC, if you go up to them after and say, yeah, thank you for putting that idea forward. I thought that was a good idea, or I thought that had potential maybe. That'll make them feel better. Even if the idea doesn't go anywhere, it'll make them feel better about putting forward the idea. And if someone else on the team sees you doing that, they'll go, well, I've got an idea. That didn't work out that badly for them. Maybe I'll put my idea forward. And, keep it positive. If the communication is positive and the interactions are positive, then more people are going to put forward more ideas and more you're going to have a healthier discussion. If you start coming back with, oh, this is a waste of time, just another idea, won't go anywhere, nothing's going to happen, don't like it, then people are going to stop putting forward ideas, people are going to stop going to try and be creative and improving things. And and you end up back to the team where no one talks to each other, and that's just not pleasant. If you have a team that actually talks to each other and enjoys talking and working with each other, that is a far more pleasant situation to be in. don't make it personal. You know, particularly, you know, if you've got, you know, someone comes in with an idea, you know, Claire always wants to use the latest everything. That's not good. That's very negative. You want to be, so what is the benefit of upgrading the compiler? Why do we want to do this? And that's not judgmental. That becomes a lot more kind of focused on what the topic is and why you might want to move in this direction. And, you know, discuss the problem. So it's like, the problem's not that Steve's always late. It's kind of, does the meeting need to move? Does someone have a clash? Can we make this work better? But again, do it in a way that's not personal. Do it in a way that everyone feels that they're being treated equally, and they're not being picked out and singled out as someone who's causing a problem. You know, that's not to say that, you know, people being late to meetings is acceptable and good. It's not. It wastes everyone's time. But, you know, find a way to work around that without sort of singling out individuals. And the same goes for any conversation you're having within a team. If there is an issue, if there's something that you want to get across, try and do it without singling people out in public. Or if it does involve a conversation with that person, then that's something your management should maybe be doing, not you. The importance of listening. So very early in my career, I'm not saying I agree with this sentiment, but we had a new CEO come in. I think I'd been there about 18 months, new CEO took over. And one of the first things he said was, there are two types of people, those who listen and those who wait to talk. Now, I'm not sure it's quite as clean cut as that, but listening is important. It is very easy to wait to talk. You know, you say something, someone else says something back, and you just carry on with your train of thought. Don't. It makes the other person feel sort of bad. It makes them feel ignored and maybe even insulted. If if they say something back to you, respond to it. If they've asked a question, answer their question. Take on board what they've said. Don't just sort of continue with whatever you were saying as if they hadn't spoken. You know, whether it's team meetings or whether they've come to talk to you and trying to explain a piece of code, you know. And it can be difficult, it can be frustrating, particularly in the case, you know, maybe you're trying to work through a piece of code and design and explain to someone why the design hasn't worked. But don't just keep repeating the same thing over and over again to them. Take the time to listen to what they're saying. What is the question? Why are they saying that something that doesn't quite make sense? What have they missed? And try and work through them, work out where the gap is there. So that you end up with a much more positive experience for both of you at that point, particularly for them, because they feel they have been listened to, not just they've been talked at for the last half hour in terms of what the code should look like, but they've had an interactive conversation, they've asked their questions, and they've actually got answers and understood what's happening. So, you know, communication in general, the main idea here is just keep it positive and don't make it personal. You know, encourage people to speak up. If you agree with someone, then say so. And if you disagree with something someone said, then say what and why, and notice the difference there. You don't disagree with someone, you disagree with what they've said. Disagreement is not personal, it's the idea you don't like, not the person, hopefully. So, you know, but if you agree with someone, then make them feel good about putting forward their idea. The whole idea is to try and keep everyone sort of happy and positive, even when, you know, you've got to have difficult conversations, because difficult conversations are a reality of what we do. You know, we don't always agree. There are a million different ways to solve any different problem, most of which are equally viable and equally appropriate. So, you know, you need to be able to have healthy conversations while have people walk away from those conversations thinking, I learned something, that was good, not, oh my God, I hated that, I'm not going to do that again. I'm just going to shut up and keep myself to myself. So what should you take away? Be aware of what your role is within the team. How do others see you? How do you see other people? How do you interact with them? How do other people interact with you? Is there anything you can do to improve that? and look for ways to encourage positive behaviours. You know, who can you learn from on the team, or maybe who can you learn from in the wider community, the wider company? What can you share? What can you contribute? And how can you support other people who are trying to share things with you and with the team? But you are an IC, you are paid to get your job done at the end of every day to do the deliverables, so don't forget that. And if you don't have time for anything else, if you do have tight deadlines, if you're just having work piled on, then you know that is what it is. But yeah, you know, you can't change the world alone, but with help you can start. Thank you. Questions?
Hi, Callum.
Hi.
Thanks for the talk. Very, very positive message, which I hope a lot of people will take on board. Just playing a devil's advocate here, okay? Collaboration requires time, right? And what if business push a very, very last minute priority for you, and in your heart, you know that if you just lock yourself in a room, most likely you'll do it faster without collaborating with the team. So what's your opinion on that?
I don't have a problem with that, provided you make it clear to your team what you're doing and why you're doing it. Communication is what's important. So, and provided you spend the time afterwards going over what you've done and getting the team to review it and understand it. So, you know, yes, a last minute change is pushed. You may be the best placed person to do it because you have the knowledge that maybe other team members don't. And yes, you know, the reality is that, you know, the person with the expert knowledge will probably get the job done quicker, and sometimes that matters. So yes, I don't think that's a bad thing, provided the team understand what's going on and get a chance to improve their knowledge afterwards. In exceptional cases, you know, if there is room to move the deadline, then yeah, obviously that's the better solution, but reality is what it is. So no, I don't think locking yourself away just for a short-term fix that is of critical importance to the company is a bad thing, provided it's done in a way that's well communicated and the team get a chance to learn from it afterwards. The downside, of course, is the more you do that, the less opportunity the rest of the team have to experience that. So you need to balance up what is the cost of missing the deadline. And you know, if your company's going to go under if you miss the deadline, then yes, obviously. But you know, if there is a minor downside, like a client's going to be upset if you deliver in 3 weeks instead of 2, but it's not, and obviously sales are then going to be unhappy and so on, customer relations might be unhappy, but there might be benefit of doing that for your team so that someone else on the team gets to experience the pressure and getting something done to those tight deadlines so that it's not always on you next time.
Do you think teams should be built around the work or the other way around?
Both work. It depends on the nature of the work. If you've got work which is very project-based, and by that I mean, you know, you have a sales team, they sell an item, you have some developers who will then work on it, build it, release it, and once that's shipped out, then there'll be another project sales have sold. Then it makes a lot of sense to have a very project-based teams in that sort of workflow. On the other hand, if you have a much more stable code base, you know, albeit with different modules and different teams looking after those modules where there's sort of incremental developments and so on, but the overall software structure is staying the same, then it makes sense to sort of keep the teams fairly stable and just looking after their own pieces within the overall system. So yeah, both work, but it depends a lot more on how much the software moves. Cool. Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you for your time.